Welcome to episode 9, Lykeminded podcast. Today we have a special guest with us. Not only is he a great husband, father, entrepreneur, partner in Guardian Wealth Strategies, has a mastermind and other businesses, great person all the way around. Trey Peterson, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Stas. So great to be with you.
So this is just, we sit and talk and try to provide value and knowledge to the public.
Yeah. Stas,
see what we can do.
I'm excited to be with you. We have a new friendship.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I love about you is that when Steph and I were driving downtown Wayzata, we got out of the car and you tackled me. And I didn't even know who was tackling me. And I saw it was you and I was like, this is my kind of friend. So
that's awesome.
Thanks for being who you are.
Yeah, so, I mean, that was a quick introduction, but there's so much more about you from, you're super godly, you have a great family, you're a great father, and everything else. So let's just go back to the basics. Like, well, how did you get into the world of wealth management and insurance and all that fun stuff to help people set themselves up for retirement and to make sure they're not struggling?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's interesting because my dream started at an Amway meeting.
Okay.
When I was 12 years old, I'm sitting in this conference, and I heard people tell their rags to riches stories.
Okay.
And my takeaway is I want to have a success story like that, and I want to help others do the same.
That's awesome.
So I think I've always had a passion for helping people win with money, because one of the things I've found in my life is that when my money is in order, everything else in my life is easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so right off the bat, I've always had a passion for business. I've had a passion for building something. One of the things that we talked about is entrepreneurs from an early age, that there's something inside you that you just want to be great. You want to maximize your potential. You know that you have some. And I started my career because when I was a junior in college, I was at church, and one of the guys that was successful financially and had a great family, he said, Trey, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know what I want to do, but I know I want to control my time, I want to control my income, and I want to impact people. And he basically said, welcome to business insurance. He goes, that's what I do. Okay. He goes, I make great income. He goes, I help people. I love what I do, and I golf whenever I want to golf.
That's awesome.
And I remember thinking, man, that's what I want. So what was interesting is I got into business insurance and 401k management because somebody I knew opened a door. And one of the things I found in life is that you have to follow the favor in your life. When people open a door, not all doors are always open. And so in my life, that's one of the things that's led me. Yeah. And as I got into that industry, I quickly found that I didn't love what I was doing, but I was chasing the fruit of what somebody else had. Okay. And so one of my first, I would just say, life lessons, and if you're watching and maybe you're in something that you don't love what you do, you started loving it, or just that door opened, there was life lessons that you needed to learn. Mm-hmm. One of the things I found is you can't do something because you want what somebody else has. Right. You have to find something that you love the process. And one of the things is, you're in real estate and you love what you do. And I think, every business, every career, there's things that you have to do. But I think one of the keys to life is if everything paid you the same, how would you spend your time?
Right. No, I completely agree with that. And like you said, we entrepreneurs are, we don't want to work a 9 to 5, but we want to work 7 days a week and 14 hours a day, right?
That's right.
And then wake up with stress every night and panic and anxiety when things don't go right, which happens to every business.
It does.
Especially in the growth stages. But I totally agree that you have certain doors that open for you, and you just have to take action, which a lot of people don't do. Right. So it's just, like the saying goes with entrepreneurs, right? You jump off a cliff and you build the parachute on the way down.
Yeah. Well, and I think, too, that, the best part about entrepreneurship is the person you become, because there's not many other things. I mean, you said this. I mean, I remember in 2020, January of 2020, I walked in my business partner's office, and I'm more of the visionary for the company, and he's more of the CFO. Mm-hmm. And I think a great company typically has both of those things.
Correct.
And I walked into his office, and he goes, I'm reading the news on COVID, and I didn't even know what COVID was. And he goes, I'm really concerned because at that time, and actually today, our business model is we meet the majority of the new families that we serve through educational financial classes that we teach in the community. taxes and retirement, Social Security and Medicare, investments, insurance products. And so he said to me, he goes, I think every library, I think every university is going to shut down. I think people are going to quit meeting. And I looked at my business partner, Yelisay, and I said, oh, Yelisay, quit being so negative. I said, there's no way America's going to shut down.
Right.
6 weeks later, everything shut down. Yep. And I'll never forget, because I'd go to bed at night, just like you said, and I'd have so much just anxiousness and how are we going to build our business when the way that we meet people was just shut off.
Right.
And so, but I look back and I think about how, as an entrepreneur, like going through hard things is what, helps you and I become the person and develop the potential that we have. Okay. And so you've heard this saying before, but one of my favorite sayings is choose your hard, right?
Right.
So a lot of people, we genuinely want to skip hard things.
Right.
But if you don't go to the gym and work out hard, then the hard is that you're unhappy because you're out of shape.
Right.
If you don't work hard to save money, then you're unhappy because the hard is that you can't pay your bills. Right. So one of my favorite quotes from my business coach, Keith Kraft, is choose your hard. Right. What are you going to choose?
Yeah, I mean, there's always choices, right? So one of my good mentors from back when I first started in real estate, he was like, just as an entrepreneur, and excuse my language podcast for this one, but he's like, you wake up and you pick what shit sandwich you're going to eat that day, right? Because there's always issues, there's always problems.
Yeah.
But it's in those issues and problems to where you have the most growth. It's not on the easy days. It's not on the days where everything's working in your favor and everything else, right? So they build you up to who you are, and as an entrepreneur, as a person, as whatever, in those hard moments and those hard days. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I also think, if you and I jump on Instagram, everybody's following Grant Cardone,
yep.
and we're following all these different entrepreneurs, Alex Hormozy,
yep.
and there's all these great guys that share a lot of great things. But I think one message that's out there is that everybody's called to be an entrepreneur. And one of the things I've found, if you just look at statistics, only 5% of people are successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Everybody else is designed for something else. So the other thing I would say is one of the keys to life is finding out is that your life? Mm-hmm. Because I know a ton of people that are a part of my team that you and I have a business, and not everybody's going to be an owner,
right.
but we can build our business where everybody can live their dream within their structure. So the example I would use is I've got a buddy that he started a company, and about 2 years in, he posted on Facebook, he goes, after 2 years of owning a business, I've decided that not sleeping at night and paying everybody's payroll is not for me. And he goes, I just took a job, and it was making a base of $250,000 plus commissions for sales. And he goes, in the last 6 months, I've found that for me, living the dream is just being in a sales role in the right company that we have a shared vision.
Yep.
So the other thing I would say is, you may be called to be an entrepreneur, but you may be called to be a part of a great organization where you don't have the stress and the overhead and the sleepless nights.
Right.
And so I just think that we're in a culture that teaches that everyone's called to be an entrepreneur, that no matter who you are, you should quit your job. And I don't think that's always the case.
No, not at all. I mean, it's, going back to, so I moved to America when I was 8. My parents spoke no English. And then a year later, they're like, we're going to open up our own businesses, right? And looking back on it now, they didn't really open up businesses in the beginning. They created jobs for themselves.
Wow.
Right? So it's like, not a lot of people can actually go out and build a business but a lot of people can go out and say they're an entrepreneur and
self-employed
and create a job for themselves, right? And have 87 LLCs on their Facebook page and everything else, just because that's what everybody wants to see today, right?
Yeah.
But it's one of those ordeals of building an actual business and an actual company takes, 10 times as long as you think it's going to take, takes 20 times the amount of money that you think it's going to take.
Yeah.
And it just keeps growing from there. So, some days I'm like, you know what? Is this worth it? Do I want to keep doing this?
Right.
Do I just go and be a number 2 or number 3 at some company and bring my talents and sleep great at night without stress? Right. But then I look back and I'm like, no, that's not my personality.
You and I have chose the stress.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course.
I think, too, one of the other big things is everybody always talks about multiple revenue streams, but they don't talk about the order in which that happens.
Right.
And so one of the things that I think a lot of people, you said this in a different way, but you go on, like you said, you go on Facebook, you go on LinkedIn, and everybody is the CEO of 10 different things.
Yep.
And what's so funny to me is I look at that and I'm like, man, it is better to be an associate of a real organization than the CEO of 7 companies that have no revenue.
Right.
And so one of the things that you and I have figured out is that while multiple streams is sexy, what all successful people do is they laser focus on one first. Mm-hmm. And you and I you look and in your 20s you're figuring out who you are. Right. In your early 30s, hopefully you're figuring out what you're going to do. But really, at least in my life, I didn't start to see the fruit or what I would call the momentum until I hit like 33, 34. And it was after 10 years of working 70 hours a week, trying to build something,
Absolutely.
And I also think that as an entrepreneur, or even if you're in sales, that what people don't realize is that the beginning, those first years, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you're working way harder than you're getting paid. And the goal is that you create momentum so that in years 5 through 7, you're getting paid more than how you're working. And I think a lot of people, that's why most businesses don't make it past those first 3 years, is people have an employee mindset where they're like, I'm not getting paid much per hour. And that's just how it works as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, you eat last, right? Everyone else gets paid,
right.
And then you get the crumbs that are left over. I mean, when I started real estate in my early 20s, and it was years of doing deals and everyone going, oh my God, you're so successful and you're so this, and then I'd look at my bank account and be like, not according to U.S. Bank, I'm not. Right?
Not seeing it.
Right? So, but yeah, it does. It takes, but I think with the younger generations and most people, they don't have what it takes to actually do the free work up front to eat the fruits 5-10 years down the road.
That's so good.
Right? Because that takes patience and takes grit and grinding and everything else.
Right. One great example that falls in line with what you're saying is I've got a buddy that he just started a company where they do basically they shoot videos and pictures for larger companies. Okay. And he's done some work for me. And one of my close friends, Matt Molino, he's a senior director for General Motors, and he oversaw the whole Hummer EV project.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And this friend of mine, I had him recording one of my business masterminds, and he was at my house, and he saw that I had one of the Hummer EVs, and he goes, hey, can I shoot some pictures and videos of it? And I go, please, I'd love that. Mm-hmm. So he shot some video, he sent it to me, and I sent it to my friend Matt, who's a senior director for General Motors. And Matt said, that video content is so good, who shot that for you? And I said, let me introduce you to my friend Manny. So Manny called me and he said, hey, your friend Matt invited me to fly out to shoot Hummers driving around in Utah.
Wow.
And he said they were willing to pay for the trip, but this time they were not paying for the work. They were just giving a handful of people an opportunity. Right. And one of the things I appreciated is Manny said to me, he said, I knew that even though I wasn't getting paid, this is how doors get opened.
Correct.
And so one of the things I appreciate is that in his early 20s, this friend of mine knew that even though it wasn't a paid-for-work project, it was worth taking time away from work that he knew would pay to go work for General Motors. And now they're starting to hire him for projects and refer him to other large auto companies. Yeah. So one of the things, you hit on it, but entrepreneurs understand that sometimes you put in the work first.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it takes, because it's, the more successful you get, right? And the top of one mountain you climb, you start climbing, you start at the bottom of the next, right? And it's the more mountains you go on, the more people you have chasing you, because they're like, oh, you're successful. What can you do for me, right?
Right.
And if you're a real business owner and real entrepreneur, and you have the real mindset of, I don't do this for the money or whatever else. I do this for my own personal growth to get better.
Right.
But B, to help and carry up as many people as I can with me.
Right.
Right? So it's that framework is hard to fathom, because you're like, I'm doing all this work for free, and I'm doing all this for free, and I'm doing this for free, and I'm paying to do this work, and why am I not getting paid?
Right.
But in time, those fruits start to ripen.
Right.
And that's where I see the disconnect today even, right? Everyone goes on Instagram, goes on Facebook, sees a bunch of people's fake lives, and goes, oh, I want that. So now I'm the CEO of this company, right?
Right.
So it's a tough environment for real business owners, real entrepreneurs today, because of Instagram and these fake lives that people sit and watch all day.
I think that most people, even our generation and younger, they would rather be the CEO making $50,000 than the title associate making $250,000 a year, which is insane to me. One of the things that I did is when we started our company, we partnered with a larger group that had other wealth managers that were a decade older than us. And I thought, man, if I'm 60 to 65 and I'm going and interviewing a 27-year-old kid to take over all of the assets that I've spent 3 or 4 decades saving, am I going to hire that kid? Probably not. But would I consider hiring him if he has a team of seasoned professionals and experts? So one of the things that I did is when I opened my business, I put CEO on nothing. I put president on nothing. I put associate advisor, even though I was the CEO, so that it looked like I was a smaller piece of something bigger. And so one of the things, that I think that we've talked about that I think is so true is that the title means nothing. It's all about production. And one of the things that entrepreneurs understand is that you can talk big, you can pretend to live big, but the only thing that matters is, are you producing? As an entrepreneur, if you're listening, I don't know if you're in your 20s or 30s or maybe you're seasoned in your 40s, but one of the lessons that I wish I would have learned sooner is that our alignments are more important than our assignments. And I learned that from Keith Kraft, who's my business coach. And the reason I say that is the people that you and I hang out with, the people that we do business with, is sometimes even more important than the things that we're doing.
Absolutely.
And I look in my business career, I'm not that good at many things, but the things I am good at is plagiarism with permission. Which I'm sure you've done too. And all I've done is I've surrounded myself with people that have the things I want, and I pick up the habits that they have. And so my senior year in college, I wrote my senior paper on neuro-linguistic programming, which is the study of successful people. And I just said, I might not be as smart as they are, but I can do what they do. So for me, that's been one of my life lessons, in that I knew that if I got around successful people, that I could learn their habits. And if I could learn their habits, I could have what they have. What would you say has been a life lesson that somebody's listening that hasn't had the success that you have? What's been one of your life lessons that you wish you would have knew 5, 7, 10 years earlier?
I mean, one of the biggest ones is going back to that, you are the sum of the 5, 6 people that you hang out with all the time. And if you're hanging out with people that don't fit your future, you're going to become that person eventually. So it's more so getting into, for me, one of my biggest lessons was, growing up, learning English, I used to stutter. It still comes out once in a while. I am a very introverted, shy person, and it took me a long time to get out of my shell as an entrepreneur even, but that set me back years because I didn't go out and create the relationships that I needed. Because of just, as a starting out entrepreneur, you have self-doubt, you're young, you're in your 20s, and you're like, oh, what do these guys know, Even though that you can outwork everyone and you have the knowledge to do it. But then that little voice in your head comes out and goes, oh, you're not good enough, don't do that. Don't go talk to that person, don't cold call this person, don't send that email. So that's what I would tell everyone is get the knowledge and then go out, email, phone call everybody that you want to be like and learn from them as much as possible and go out and do the free work.
So good. I think, too, one of the things I've learned is when you get around people, you don't just pick up the things that they're good at, you also pick up their weaknesses. So one of the things that I've been intentional about is when I work with people, when I learn from people, there are people that have things that I want, skills that I want, but you have to also know that if they are not living the life you want in their marriage, or maybe they're not a great parent, you have to decide, is this somebody that I want to have a life like, or is this somebody that I want to learn a specific skill from? And so one of the things I'd encourage people too is find a group of people that don't just have the business you want, but they have the marriage you want, they have the relationship with your kids that you want. One of the things 3 years ago is I found that I had a lot of great friends, but I didn't have that many people that I was chasing, because a lot of the successful people I knew, they weren't faithful to their wife. They were living a life that ended up causing their business to fail. And so what really helped me is I said, who do I know that not only has the business I want, but the marriage I want. And I ended up having to I found a group out of Dallas.
Okay.
Didn't even find a group in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so 6 times a year, I fly across the country to go be with this group of guys. Right. And what's interesting is, even though I knew from a young age, and you brought it up, that we're the average of the 3 to 5 people we spend the most time with, it took me probably 5 years after I knew I needed a new circle to go find it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I encourage you is, maybe you don't have access to the people that you want to be around. Who do you know that does? Or if you're listening and you're looking for somebody specifically to help you grow in a specific area, I'd love to help you reach that person. One of the things that I started 2 years ago was the mastermind group.
Yeah.
And the business coaching. And what's so funny is, as much as I love wealth management, one of the things that's impacted my life the most is having great mentors. Right. And so one of my passions, like yours, is helping connect people with people that can open doors that you can't open for yourselves. Yeah. Who's been a person or somebody in your life that's opened a door, or what's a life lesson on an alignment you've had in your success?
So it's funny because, I grew up with a large group of cousins and friends and whatever else. And then I'm sure this happens to everyone that I've talked to. Eventually those people start falling off naturally.
Yeah,
right? Because you're just going like this,
yeah, and
they're just staggering along, right? And they just fall off.
Yeah.
And then you meet people that come into your life, whether it's by faith or, whatever, that just help you get better and propel. Yeah. Right? And, the thing with today is you have so much information, right?
For sure.
From podcasts to reels to everything, right?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. So it's like information overload. So what I would suggest is just find a topic and people that you want to learn from.
Yeah.
Go listen to their podcasts. Go read their books. Learn that way.
Yeah.
And then pick up the skills to go out and actually meet people that you can provide value to.
Yeah.
That will help propel you 10 years ahead.
Right.
Just from relationships.
That reminds me of a quote that says, people always talk about leaders are readers, right?
For sure.
But one of my favorite quotes is, don't just read books, but read the books that are going to answer the questions that you're asking today. And so, like in my life, when I think about every good thing, every time I've had a new opportunity or growth, it's been through a new relationship.
Correct.
I think about when I was in college, Leroy Taggart, he opened the door for me to get into my first company that I was the first college graduate they'd ever hired. Wow. Without 10 years of sales experience. Okay. And I was a successful athlete, so I was really confident.
Sure.
And I sold them on how I was uniquely gifted, to be the first college student they ever hired. And I'll never forget, after a year of selling them, I got into that role, and I was like, I am way underqualified to be here. Even though I sold them on hiring me, after I got in the role, I was like, they were right. I need 10 years of sales experience. But what I did to make up for it is I just put in the work, right? Which we've both have done. Yep. I think about my friend Elijah Kovart. He introduced me to my wife. He introduced me to the educational model of fiduciary wealth management. Okay. So the reason I bring those up is every good thing in my life has come through a new relationship. So one of the things I always ask people is, when is the last time that you added a new contact to your favorites list? You pull out your cell phone. When was the last time you added somebody new, not just to your contacts list, but to your favorites list? Yeah. And the reason I would say that is, in my life, there's been seasons, and this might sound funny, but where I've met somebody and I was like, that person is somebody that I want to get close to. Right. And I'll literally put them in my favorites list before they know it, because it'd kind of be weird.
Right.
And I'll randomly text them to start building that relationship. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I'd encourage people to do is, if you're stuck, or maybe you're in a season where you're winning and people look at you and they think you're on the top of the mountain, but there's more inside of you, that there's greatness, mm-hmm. Who do you know that has that next level of success for you that you can get close to? And how can you get into their world, which is what you were saying, and that's been true in my life too.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, my business model has always been, I've always worked with investors and everything, even when I started in real estate. And it's never been about the next deal or the next this or the next that. It's always been, what can I do today to build that relationship with you?
Yeah.
So I can do business with you for 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
Not one transaction and we're done.
Well, I think that in our world, everybody talks about like being a great networker or like being great at sales.
Right.
And what truly makes people great at networking like you is you and I know that the transaction isn't I'm going to do something for you and then I'm going to look at my watch to see when you return the favor.
Correct.
The key to good networking is add as much value to other people as you can without asking for anything back.
Right.
And when you need it, it'll be there.
Of course.
And I think that's one of the things a lot of people miss is that because they've always been paid per hour or they've always had a salary, they think that relationships work that way too. You put in the time, you get paid. And one of the things I've learned is if you just choose to become a generous person, there's been plenty of times where I've given to people and it never comes back from those people.
Right.
But if you live generous, God will be generous with you. Correct. And things just end up working in your favor. I think a lot of people, especially like you and I, different stories, but even I remember when growing up we were poor. Like we ate hot dogs, macaroni and cheese. Yeah. My dad was a pastor, so he didn't have much of a salary. But I appreciate that I got to watch him go from what I would say was like broke. We finally made it to middle class and then beyond that. And so one of the things I appreciate, though, is that through, even when my parents were broke, they were generous with the things that they could be generous with. Right. And I think one of the things that holds some people back is when you've not had things before, we tend to hold on to those things and fear that they're not going to stay and fear that, that success is only short term. Right. So one of the things I'd encourage you to do is choose to become a generous person with your finances, with your time, with the way that you compliment people genuinely. And I think that's had a huge impact on my life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's always been, like even looking back on it, it was during the REO days, the distressed properties and everything else to where, you would come to a bank and the buyers would be strapped for cash. You'd have to give up half your commission just to get the deal closed.
Right.
And then you'd be like, I just worked all this time. Didn't get paid anything.
Yeah.
Happy to do it just to get it done.
Yeah.
They got a great deal, whatever.
Yeah.
But then those things started spiraling kind of naturally into more and more business and more deals without even thinking about it. Like, what can you do for me in return?
Right.
It just naturally happens, whether it's God, the universe, whatever you believe in.
Yeah.
Right? It always comes back.
Right.
In different ways, shapes and forms, but it always comes back.
Right. Generosity works.
100%.
I think, too, is one of the reasons why who you hang out with matters is because most people will agree with their friends with whatever they say.
Correct.
And one of the things that I would say that entrepreneurs do is they're not scared to give an opinion that's different than what somebody wants to hear. So one of the things I'll often say is if somebody asks me something, I'll say, do you want my opinion or do you want me to agree with you?
Right.
And I can tell it kind of puts them on pause.
Yeah.
But about a year and a half ago, I had a friend, successful financial advisor. He was working for a firm, making $350,000 a year, 32 years old. And I said to him, how long are you going to work for somebody else? And he kind of got stepped back. And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I go, how long are you going to work for someone else instead of build your thing? And he goes, well, I make like $350,000 a year. And I go, I know. You could be making $1 million a year. Right. And he goes, well, and I only work like 30, 40 hours a week. And I said, I know. But your child is 2 years old. I said, if you wait 3 years and 5 years, when you start your business, now you're going to have your hardest working 3 to 5 years. Yep. In the season that they're going to sports, you're going to miss basketball. You're going to miss volleyball games. You're going to miss baseball games. I said, if you want my opinion, you need to do it now. And what was so funny is every other friend that he had, they saw him already on the top of the mountain. Traveled all the time, had a great income, his job was safe, he had the benefits. He ended up leaving, starting his own company with one of the other guys that he worked with. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you think? And he said, you were right. He said, I shouldn't have waited any longer. He said, it's just like you said, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's been the best thing I've ever done. So one of the things I would ask you is, are you asking people questions that are where you want to be, or are you asking the people that want to be where you're at? Because your answers are going to be different.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's time to wrap it up. We're getting some signs from our CMO, to wrap things up. So any final thoughts, Trey? And thank you again. We appreciate you coming on and taking the time. Final thoughts on what is the hardest challenge today in 2024 with entrepreneurship, with business, with everything, swirling in the economies and the news and everything else. What is one piece of advice that you would have for somebody that's starting out today on how to be successful?
My number one thing for anybody starting a business or jumping into sales would be that you need to find, as cheesy as it sounds, you have to find your tribe. You have to find a group of people that are going to give you advice that accelerates your success. I'll never forget when I started interviewing at my first company, they would interview not just you, but your parents, and if you were married, your spouse. Yep. Because what they were looking for is, do you have people in your life that are going to encourage you to stick it out when it gets hard, right, and it looks like you're not going to make it? Right. Or are you going to have people that are going to say, you know what, you look tired, it looks like you're getting underpaid, maybe you should do something else. Right. And so the number one thing I would say is entrepreneurship, and I think you would agree, Stas, it's very lonely.
Very.
And I think that it's difficult. There's been years where I had nights that I wasn't sleeping because things didn't look like they were going to work. Mm-hmm. And if I hadn't had people around me that said, keep putting in the work, keep doing the right things, as long as you have the right habits, you're going to win, yep, I probably wouldn't have made it. So my number one piece of advice would be do whatever it takes, fly across the country, but find a group of people that have the things that you want, that are living in the way that you want to live, and do life with them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree.
Stas, thanks for having me on. It's great to be with you.
Thanks again for coming, and hopefully we'll do this again soon.
That'd be great.
Awesome. Thank you. Episode 9, Like-Minded Podcast. Subscribe. Check us out if you need anything. Where can people find you, Trey, if they need you?
Yeah, so my email is trey@gwealth, G for Guardian, and the word wealth.com. On Instagram, my handle is TreyCpeterson. And on LinkedIn, if you look up Trey, middle initial C, Peterson, shoot me a message, find me. Any way I can add value to your life, if you're a friend of Stas's, I'd love to do whatever I can for you.
Awesome. Thanks again, and that's a wrap. We'll see you on the next one.